Well, we're here today with J. Glenn Evans. J. Glenn, we understand that you've started this nonprofit farm to help the homeless not be homeless. So can you tell us a little bit about this project?
Well, it's called Glenn K. Evans Farms, and we we feel that each community should be able to feed itself. So I want to train farmers, and you couldn't ask for a better opportunity for people who are homeless. They get food, shelter, home, and they have a community, and they can do something constructive to help not only themselves but to other people and become a credit to the community. And that's basically what we're setting out to do.
So you've got the 501c3 and
we've got approval on our 501c3.
You've got the land purchased so far, and well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where were you born and raised, and your life and work experiences?
Well, I was born in 1930 back in Oklahoma, not quite the Dust Bowl days in the area. We did have one. I was out playing in the front yard. My mother grabbed my hand and says, "Let's get in the house." And I looked behind me, and there's a wall of sand coming at as high as I could see. And it just engulfed the place. And I grew up on this small farm where we took care of ourselves. We could have lived without the rest of the world.
So this was your, you lived there during the 30s for 6-7 years, and what kind of work did you have to do as a young child?
Everything. I mean, I chopped cotton, I chopped corn, I picked cotton, worked in the garden, helped mother can so that we preserved enough food for the rest of the year. And actually my mother supported us with this little quarter-acre section of land in the garden while Dad spent his time raising peanuts and cotton. And when it came time to sell it, he was lucky enough to get his seed money back. And I often wondered why he spent all of his time out there doing that when if he'd owned his own land, he could have gotten by on a quarter of an acre.
So tell us about this book, The Wayfarers, where no one is an outcast.
Well, this book, in writing this book, is where I got the inspiration to do this Glenn K. Evans farm, because the characters set out to do something for the homeless. They were a group of people gathered down at I call it, it's the Wayfarers, but it was inspired by the Merchants Cafe there in downtown Pioneer Square in Seattle, Washington.
Well, okay, back to Glenn K. Evans Farm. What's your real mission there?
My mission is to create a showplace that other people will imitate, as well as if we can raise sufficient money, we want to acquire more land and make 5 and 10 acres available to families to go out and become independent farmers. And this will help the community because they'll raise enough to feed themselves, preserve it, and what they don't need, they'll sell. If they don't sell it, they give it to the needy in our community. Plus, we'll get them to be a credit to the community, volunteer for service to help the community. We'll probably have a watermelon festival once a year and invite the whole city, come and meet your neighbors, including the new people who we brought in.
So what progress have you made up to this date?
Well, so far we acquired our first farm, a 30-acre spot, just 2 miles south of Wewoka, Oklahoma, my hometown. And I would like to have started something out in Washington, where I live now, but the land costs were $5,000 or $10,000 an acre. I was able to acquire this land in Oklahoma for $1,100 an acre, and only 2 miles from town.
So on the screen here, you can see there's a creek running through the corner of the property, and we just went in with Google Earth here, and you can see the water tanks. So there's year-round water, and it's been used as a farm in the past.
Yeah, and there's one oil well pumping away, but we don't own the mineral rights, but we'll get a little fee for them taking up our space.
Very cool. Are you going to pay any wages on the farm, or who's?
Not likely. This is going to be, if you come there, you're a member of the family, and you contribute. It's going to be no-till farming. You're not no plow's going to touch the ground, and there's not going to be any tractors. And if you're free, you want to do an odd job on the side, you can do it. But you switch in and help raise food. Now, if we happen to have any money, there's a little stipend, we'll share it with the people so they got some little personal money. But it's not going to be a hired man. You're just a member of the family.
It doesn't sound like it'll be very much work if there's no tilling. Is it still going to take a lot of work to grow your food?
Not. We'll plant this stuff in the spring. We'll have fruit trees and plant wheat and clover, and then there'll come harvest time and then preservation. So this basically is the time, and we'll try to make a cultural center out of it.
Oh, I see. So How are you going to handle drug problems now if someone becomes a problem like that?
Well, it's going to be run fairly democratically. We'll have the people elect, and we'll have a council of elders, and it takes a vote of a majority. If somebody has too much of a problem, we'll have to ask them to leave. I mean, we're very tolerant, except in Oklahoma, it still has very serious laws against marijuana, and we can't do anything that will endanger our community.
I get it. So this farm, what are your most immediate goals on the farm there?
Well, this year we're out to raise money so that we can build shelters and dig a well. And once we have shelters, we can do it without wells with potable water if we have to. But we got to get some shelters for people to live and get out there and start planting in the spring. Hopefully we can get started this spring.
And so there's going to be some shelter. You said you've got some trailer houses lined up.
Well, I'm looking to buy a couple of trailer houses as temporary shelters until we can build something.
They're like 12 by 50s or something? Or?
They're 12 by 60.
Oh, that's full-size deal.
Not bad at all. And actually, in building shelters, we probably have some small homes, tiny houses, and I'd like to have one bigger community house, which we'll use as a barn and maybe initial shelter.
Oh, very good. So is there a well there to feed those water tanks, or?
No, we have to dig a well.
Oh, I see.
It'll probably be about 75 foot and probably cost us a couple of grand to drill it.
And so you're on a state highway. I can see you running there.
Yeah, Highway 56, about 2 miles from town.
Have you got broadband?
Well, I don't know, except that I can use my cell phone from Wewoka.
Oh, okay. And it's 2 miles up to town, so people can ride a bike into town there.
Or even walk.
Or even walk.
I used to walk that far to catch a bus when I was going to school.
And so if people are bored, is there a movie hall anywhere in Wewoka?
I don't think they have a movie house. There's one 12 miles away in Seminole.
Oh, I see. And your big market is Oklahoma City, is 60 miles?
Oklahoma City, Shawnee, and the little villages. But we basically want to feed ourselves and take care of our own local community. We'll go to farmers markets to get some cash. You know, you always need a little cash.
Well, do you see a day when the community might become a burden on the local community because of poverty or a need for help?
We hope to make these people a credit to the community. We don't expect to get help from the community. We'll raise our own food, preserve it, and feed ourselves, and volunteer to do services in the community. So we don't want to be a burden. We want to be a credit.
No, and when I talk to homeless here in the Pacific Northwest, most of them need to be near a city because they do draw down various forms of services, whether that be SNAP benefits or even to get to stores or for medical services again. Some are retired, and so where's the nearest Social Security office and SNAP benefits?
I don't know whether they have one in Wewoka or not, but I'm sure there's one in Shawnee, which is 30 miles away, maybe even Seminole, 12 miles. And then Oklahoma City, 60 miles. We're southeast of Oklahoma, about 60 miles, Oklahoma City.
You got a bank in Wewoka? 2 miles?
You bet. Got 2 banks.
Okay.
Been there way back when I was a kid.
We'll have to get rid of those banks. Yeah.
Well, these are local community banks. They kind of help support the community. In fact, the president of the bank, I met him at an anniversary, and he was an Eagle Scout too.
Well, that's a good point to departure to tell us about your professional life.
Well, I wanted to be a great rich writer. And I had a rich uncle tell me one time, well, what do you want to be? And I said, when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to be a great rich writer. He says, if you want to get rich, you go where the money is. And he suggested that I become a stockbroker. And back in those days, I said, well, aren't they the guys that jump off of buildings because they don't want to be poor anymore? He says, no, they learn how to make money on other people. So I directed my activities. I want to get rich first.
And how many years were you in the stockbroker business there?
I was a stockbroker and investment banker about 20 years. I started a one-man shop and grew to 3 offices and 40 brokers. And I got fed up to here with the bureaucrats, and I said, to hell with it, I'm going to go back to my early ambition of writing. And that's what I've been doing since 87.
87. Did you get into the Poets West?
Well, I created Poets West, which is a cultural center for several. We have about 6 venues where poets can come and read. We do a radio program that's syndicated nationally at Berkeley's Pacific Autoport, and it's Poets West. We have a website, but this is still going. But this, my last hoorah is going to be this Glen K. Evans farm.
So you must be an old guy. You've had several chapters in your life.
I'm an 87-year-old fart.
Okay. So you want to tell us a little bit about your early life or your family? Did you have grandparents on the farm there? Or?
One of the greatest influence of my life was my grandmother. She was almost a sage. We go, I was a nervous kid in those days.
Yeah, what year was she born?
Oh, back in 1870 something, or 1880. In fact, they weren't in the Civil War, but their families were. And growing up in that way, my grandmother was from Tennessee and my grandfather was from Alabama. So back in those days, it was damn Yankees. But I got away from that. I grew up in a place where they had Jim Crow. And I outgrew it. I saw how wrong it was that people are people. I don't care what color you are. And in our farm, it's going to be the same way. There's not going to be any prejudice against black, brown, or yellow.
So you were too young to get into World War II, but do you remember those years because you were a teenager?
Yeah, my dad went to war in 1940. He was in the National Guard, and then we moved to town. So I had 10 years on this farm.
No, that's when you left the farm.
Yep. Then I became a little city boy, and my ambition was to be an Eagle Scout. And we got it.
See how the war it wove its changes throughout society in so many ways.
I always worked in paper drives to get paper for the war, but I've outgrown the idea that we have to start fighting everybody. We're going to have to do something about stopping these wars. It's too dangerous to have war anymore, and it's not people who make war; it's leaders. And we have to have some kind of international organization that has the power to take leaders out of their position, regardless of how powerful the country is, if they make war or abuse human rights. It has to come.
So do you think the USA is going to change its concept of being the
not until they get
superpower of the controlling the world?
Not likely until they get busted from financing the army, which they can no longer afford, and then they're going to have to settle back and become a fellow nation.
Yeah,
it may come in a few years.
Chalmers Johnson used to talk about this, that the end stage of empire is bankruptcy of the...
Oh, it's going to kill us. They're never going to be able to pay all that off.
So do you see the U.S. declining into bankruptcy?
Well, they don't actually take bankruptcy, but they're going to have to quit fighting these wars. They can't afford it. I mean, the rest of the world's going to tolerate them if they'll just back off and be a good boy.
Oh, so it may be like England has just gradually...
No, England had their empire, the same thing we're trying to do. Leaders don't learn. Even back in the time of Rome and Alexander, they all did the same thing. They go out and create, like Napoleon. I loved Napoleon at first, what he did, but, he's just another killer.
And this idea of becoming independent on a farm, do you see, what is the role of this, or does this make a contribution towards the reform of imperialism or the capitalism?
Well, if you have food and shelter and love, that's basically all you need. And if people don't make war, we have to build an alternative to this corporate food chain. And I think every community should get where they can feed themselves, or at least as much as possible. Because, if you have food and shelter, you've got freedom. And we got to help the local community be able to render their services and not have to be dependent on Washington, D.C.
And a contribution toward the climate crisis?
Well, this mega agriculture is destroying our soil with their fertilizer and their pesticides, and we're going to do no-till farming. It's going to be organic. You let the natural enemies of the bugs take care of themselves, and if you give them shelter, and because when you use these sprays, you kill the good insects too. So we need to enhance our soil and let nature. We're going to plant the food and let nature do its work without scratching up the earth. That's kind of what we're doing.
The members of the farm.
Yeah.
So maybe most of them have never farmed before. And do you anticipate that they'll have trouble adjusting to the amount of work? Is it a lot of work to be a
Not
farmer?
really, not really, not with the way we're going to do it, because you plant the seed, you don't have to plow, and you harvest it and preserve it, and it's not all that much work. We'll have time for some cultural development, and probably if there's some people who need some education, we'll get some volunteer teachers to come out and help us. We might get some pro bono medical help for the local community.
Oh yeah, we were talking about sister farms or other intentional communities may come and help.
And we'll cooperate with them.
And you can learn from their help.
Their organization, how they handle problems.
A lot of people. Huh?
We don't have all the answers, but we'll find them. Yeah, I like to start something small, and then you make small mistakes, and then once you prove what works, then you grow and expand. We would like to make this Glen K. Evans farm, get sufficient money, go out to some of the big outfits like Food Foundation that want to help people help themselves, and acquire more land and make it available very inexpensively. For maybe 10% of what they produce, and it comes back into the community.
Very cool.
That's what we're out to do.
So, do you have any final words you want to get into the video?
Well, I think that one of the things that we need is individual responsibility. We ourselves cannot change the world, but we ourselves can do what we can to help our community and be peaceable and build a movement to make it grow. We have to get other people doing the same thing. We can't expect the government to do things for us. We've got to do it ourselves, and we need a government. A country this size has to have a big government, because to regulate and keep order, but without abusing the people. That's basically what we want to do, and provide an opportunity for people to live a decent life and have a home. Anyone that supports us is never going to be able to say they're homeless, because they got a home they can come to, Glen K. Evans Farm. Because by then we're going to have more land and more space and more opportunity.
Okay, well, with that, I guess we'll say goodbye. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to KCXU 92.7 FM on your dial, San Jose, California. Welcome to KCXU 92.7 FM on your dial, San Jose, California.